Okay, so it's starting to look pretty clear that Wolves need another striker. Obviously, Fabio Silva and Raul Jimenez, I think, are pretty safe. I don't think any of them will be leaving anytime soon. In the friendlies we've seen so far, Raul Jimenez looks back to his best. I think in the Crew, Betis, and Las Palmas games, I actually think Fabio Silva's been a bit. I kind of expected a bit more from him personally. I was kind of expecting him to have like this breakout season. Don't wrong, I'm sure he still will, but he's had a bit of a slow start. But those two are safe, right? I think it's pretty clear that they'll be at the club. No point speaking about them. But I still think we need a third choice. So I thought I'd look at some players we could potentially sign. Obviously, there's still two other strikers at the club, right? And look, I think it's pretty clear we need a striker. If you look at the Premier League last season, obviously it's a different manager, but we averaged the fifth lowest goals in the league. We were below like teams like Newcastle and Palace, and it's not like we weren't having shots. We were very mid-table. We were above some big clubs, but we weren't taking them. And a lot of that's because if you look at the distance of shots, we were second. Only Leicester took more shots from further away in terms of average distance. To me, that says that we didn't really have a striker, so we were just kind of shooting from range, which obviously has a lower probability, right? Regarding Cutrone and Rafa Mir, Cutrone's an interesting one because I actually think he's had a really good pre-season so far. But it's all about his mind, right? Like, we don't know if he wants to be here. He can obviously speak the language now. There's an interview of him on YouTube speaking English for like half an hour, so he can really clearly speak the lingo now. Cutrone's a weird one because he's clearly useful on the ball and he can press. Like, he works hard. Like, 25 pressures a game is ridiculous. Like, that is amazing. But he's so limited that I feel like you'd kind of have to take cash if offered. And Rafa Mir is one of those players that he's so specific to a system. He's very like Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Chris Woody. He's a big guy who holds the ball up and finishes, but that's kind of all he does. Like, his numbers suggest that as well. Like, he does absolutely nothing on the ball. He can't really dribble. He's not an amazing presser like Cutrone. He's kind of just a big guy who gets loads of shots, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think if he had a few years left on his contract, he'd be a really good backup to Raul Jimenez specifically. But with a year left on his contract, we kind of have to sell him, right? So that kind of leaves you with needing that third choice striker, or at least that guy that can kind of rotate with Fabio. And I actually think there's some really good options on the market. Obviously, Rafael Leao is the main one that's been linked, which I think would be an interesting signing. It'd be very Wolvesy, George Mendes, client, Portuguese, etc. It's kind of hard to judge because most of his minutes kind of off the bench, which obviously makes it easier to score goals, right? And his stats would be boosted by the fact he's playing for a bigger club. Whereas if he dropped down to Wolves, obviously the stats would lower a bit. But what his stats suggest to me, really good dribbler, which is kind of something Wolves are kind of stockpiling. Trincao, Traore, Podence, Neto, all have really good dribble and progressive carry numbers. Rafael Leao will add to that, but kind of in a more central area. It would concern me that his pressures are really low. To only have 10 pressures a game, especially when you're playing for a big club, is kind of a bit concerning. But maybe that's a coaching thing. Obviously pressing is really easy to coach. But he's kind of got all the stats that suggest that he could be a really good, useful second striker. And his numbers are very similar to Diogo Jota's before he left Wolves. So I think Rafael Leao would be a pretty sensible signing. He's quite tall as well, 6'2" for someone that's that quick. He could be an interesting second choice striker. Although I feel like he'd have to start because I still don't think Fabio Silva and Jimenez as a front two would work. Personally, I feel like they're too similar. But anyway, I think Rafael Leao would be a really good signing for Wolves. Another one that I thought would be interesting was Alassane Player. Obviously, he's a bit older. He's 28. But I remember I saw this on Twitter a few weeks ago about how apparently he's available for 15 million. And I get that he's 28. But Alassane Player's been a really consistent striker for like 8-9 years now. Maybe not that long, but like 5-6 years now. At Nice, and then he went to Gladbach for some reason, and he's done really well there. He had a bit of a down year last year under Marco Rosa, but his numbers are still really good. Again, a really good progressive carrier, a really good progressive passer. His numbers strike me as someone that's kind of not a natural number 9, but a good second striker. Someone that can feed a big guy. Can play that killer ball. Again, not a great presser, which is something that Bruno Lage could coach into him, but I think he'd be a really good kind of second striker. If you look at some of the players that his numbers are similar to, they're all kind of second striker types. And I think if someone like him for £15 million, I know he's 28 and wouldn't have resale value, and Wolves would never sign him. But it'd feel like to me that would feel like a very sensible kind of backup signing, personally. But yeah, I know Wolves aren't going to make any of these signings, by the way. But whatever. Same with Ilas Bebu, kind of very similar player. Plays for Hoffenheim, got 9 goals, 7 assists last season. Again, really good dribbler, really good second striker. Because that's what I think we need. I feel like this team, at least in the preseason games, have lacked a lot of pace up front. I feel like you need someone with pace next to Fabio or Raul. Ilas Bebu has that. He's a really good dribbler, really good progressive passer. A bit more of a defender as well from the front, decent in the air for someone that's not that tall. Probably could get him cheap. Hoffenheim always sell their best talent for pretty low prices. They've always been a feeder club. He'd be an interesting one, Ilas Bebu. Again, never going to sign him because he's 27 and plays in the Bundesliga. I don't think we ever signed someone out of Germany, but it would be a pretty good signing. I think Edouard as well would be a really good signing. He was kind of someone that I thought we'd never get, just because he was always linked with like Arsenal and Leicester. But no one signed him yet. Apparently, Celtic are very open to selling him for quite a cheap price. And he's consistently put up a good goal record in Scotland. Gone through good academies, which suggests he does have pedigree. And he's at that age now where you feel like he needs to make that step up. And playing in the front two would probably help him. You don't really want to be playing on your ones up front when you're just moving to a new league. Playing in the front two would probably help him. Always had a consistent goal record. Celtic have a really good record with players leaving Celtic and coming to England. I think it would be a really sensible signing. Obviously might not adapt, but I think it would be a really good signing for Wolves. And then one that I kind of just thought would be an interesting shout just because he's on a free. But Robin Quaison kind of been a really consistent performer in the Bundesliga on a free transfer. Let's just say, because obviously we need a central midfielder and a centre back, and I feel like they are higher priorities. Robin Quaison would be a pretty good pickup on a free transfer. Had a decent Euros, he's a really good dribbler, really good defender from the front. Kind of, again, a second striker. But I think there are some good options out there. I think Rafael Leao is probably the most likely one, but I think there are some good, interesting options out there that Wolves could get to kind of help Raul and Fabio. I just think we need someone that can dribble, carry the ball a bit, and kind of play here, where people thought and Gibbs White would play. That, in inverted commas, that João Felix mould. And I think watching the preseason games, I feel like we just miss a bit of a link. Because Trincao and Aït-Nouri are so stuck out wide that I feel like we need that second striker guy to pick the ball off Neves. I don't feel like it's the biggest priority. I still think we need a central midfielder and a centre back way more. But I think there are some pretty good options out there. Personally, I think Alassane Plea would be great, but I think Rafael Leao would do a really good job too. Or just keep Rafa Mir. It's never happening. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, because why not? And yeah, peace.